Yo guys, what is going on? Blossom's back and welcome back to another episode of Solid Drives. I'm in a very cheerful mood today. I'm in a very happy mood today, okay? Because I just saw the best joke ever. You want to know what it is? It's this pack. What the actual is this pack? Seriously, 3 ultra. Usually when I review a pack, I go ultras to legendaries. I couldn't even do that for this pack because if I only did ultras and above, I'd only be reviewing about 10 cards. And this entire final is a joke, okay? You cannot tell me, okay? You cannot tell me, Hutch especially, they cannot tell me that the same team that designed that amazing Peugeot T16 final. Now, it might not have been amazing for everyone because not everybody won the prize car, but at least the pack that you could have opened was fun, it was good, and it awarded a lot of good cars. Remember what that pack was? It was the rear-wheel drive German World Expo, where all of the legendaries were just a bunch of OP Porsches, which were amazing, and the one non-slick tire car was that Mercedes with performance tires, but it's still 105 MRA, and all the epics were really good. There was a fantastic variety. That is a final that I thought, you know what, maybe Hutch knows what the they're doing now. But no, you cannot tell me the same team that designed that diamond of an event decided to go with this. You cannot tell me that for some reason they intentionally designed this event with those requirements, with these final track sets, for it to be fun for the players. They designed this, I feel like they purposely designed this just to watch the world burn, for them to have fun with the players. Not for the players to have fun, for them to laugh at the players. Seriously, this pack, right? 2 of the legendaries, the only 2 legendaries you can get from this pack are slick tires. And there's 3 rain track sets in the final. Let me tell you about how bad about opening this pack is, the feeling of opening this pack, okay? First of all, if you want to, compete in this final and you don't have a good hand and you have to open all 15 carbon fibers, then you will have to open all 15 carbon fibers, and the majority of the time you're going to be getting a lot of duplicates because there are only 3 ultra rares that you can get from this, and there are only 4 epics that you can get from this, and there's like a 75% or a 77% chance or whatever the hell it is chance of getting an I think it's 82% even. There's an 82% chance of getting an ultra. Like, bro, what is this? What actually is this pack? It's such a freaking joke, and it gets even funnier or even worse, whatever you want to say, because I'm going to show you the track sets now, okay? So like I said, there are 3 rain, right? So you got the slalom, you have the test bowl, and the dry, and then you have 3 rain. You have slalom, G-force, and a 0 to 100 to 0. The second track set, slalom, test bowl, and then another 0 to 100 to 0. So you actually need a fast car that is capable to be used in the wet, but that also annexes 3 of the best cars you can get from the pack, the 3 Porsches, because they all have slick tires. And the third one has a test bowl in the wet. They want you to use that epic Cobra that they gave out in the qualifiers. And the last one over here, test bowl, slalom, G-force, twisty circuit, and a karting circuit. Bro, this thing is a joke. This actual event is actually a freaking joke, dude. They want you to use this AC Cobra. They want you to use this RQ68 piece of crap, bro. Oh my god, this is actually a joke. This is okay. You know what, I'm gonna review this pack as I always do in this series. I'm going to review the pack in a general sense, like if you just want to open it and not compete in the finals, you just want to see if you can get something good from this pack. And to be fair, there are some pros about this pack. It's just that I'm kind of laughing at how small it is, and combined with the final track sets, it's just, let me know down in the comments below how you feel about all this, man. To me, like, if I was a new player or like an intermediate player, I would be really mad. But considering that I've been playing this game for 5 years, and a lot of you watching are probably experienced players as well, you already know that this is just the usual antics and shit that Hutch likes to pull out from time to time. It's actually just sad. It really just shows that they don't really want to improve, which is sad for a company, really, that you don't want to improve your game. But anyway, let me just review this pack in a general standpoint. So we're gonna start off with the Audi 1.8 Quattro, and I'm gonna put that in daily driver. It's a relatively strong car. It's one of the strongest, if not the strongest, RQ41 standard tire car in the game. It is lightweight and it handles relatively decently well. 4-wheel drive standard tires and medium ground clearance. I would say daily driver for a low RQ standard tire car. It is a bit of a dark horse. I know that the handling isn't the best thing in the world, but it wins a surprisingly amount of events, and is actually pretty useful for this final if you don't have 2 or more of the Audi Quattro 3.6. Alright, moving on is the Audi Quattro. Now this one I'm going to put in frequent provider, mainly because it kind of has that 4-wheel drive medium ground clearance niche, but it also handles pretty well. 86 handling when you max it out is actually pretty, impressive. So to be fair, I'll put it in frequent provider. It's a pretty decent car. Moving on is the Ford Granada Scorpio, and I'm going to move this to frequent provider as well. Kind of like the Audi V8 Quattro, it's just worse. Like, they're both four-wheel drive, they're both standard tires, they both have the same 0 to 60, and they have very similar top speeds, but the Granada just handles less, making it a worse car. That being said though, four-wheel drive and standard tires still isn't the worst thing in the world, and then also it is a car from the 80s, so there are going to be moments where you will need to use it. The only problem is this: where it usually operates in, the Audi is going to operate in as well, because both of them are from the same decade, both of them are from the same update, both of them are in the same niche, but the only difference is that the Ford Granada at least is British and the Audi is German. If the Ford Granada was also German, I would have moved it down to Pernicious Ulcer. The next one is the Lotus Turbo Esprit HC. Now this one might be a little controversial, but I'm gonna put it in frequent provider. I know it looks really good on paper, but to be completely honest, it's a bit of a hybrid that's a master of everything, and a jack of all trades, master of none. There really isn't many situations where I need to use the Lotus Turbo Esprit. Usually, because I have two of these Max already, I always thought, like the rest of you guys watching, I always thought that this was going to be a really good car for a super rare, right? It handles pretty well, has a low 0 to 60, MRA isn't the best thing in the world, but really where I find myself using the Lotus Turbo Esprit the most is just to lose by 50 on a hairpin road or a fast circuit. So because of that, frequent provider, I know it looks better than that, but it really isn't when you want to, use it in an actual event. Moving on is the Mercedes-Benz 560 SEC. I freaking love this car of all my heart. It's one of my favorite Mercedes ever made, but it definitely is a meta outsider. It doesn't have the MRA, it doesn't have the handling, and rear-wheel drive standard tires is probably the most useless niche in the entire game. So because of that, it definitely is a meta outsider. If you're not a drag spec car and you have rear-wheel drive and standard tires, most likely you're just gonna get aborted. Anyway, moving on is the Porsche 718 RSK. This one is an interesting one because it's very light. It's somewhat decent on the slalom because of that lightweight. The MRA is pretty decent, but the handling is really bad. But the MRA isn't good enough to be like a damn outright, drag spec car. And the top speed isn't high enough for it to also be known as an outright drag spec car. So it's a very interesting one, the Porsche RSK. Like I said, much like the Lotus Turbo Esprit, I think it's a very niche car for very niche situations. Is it a frequent provider? I think it's a provider, but I don't think it's gonna be very, very frequent. I don't know. Another thing that gives it a little bit of a boost is the year that it's from. If we ever have like a 1950s and only a 1950s event, then yeah, fair play. This would be like one of the best cars to use. So yeah, I'll put it in a frequent provider, but a very, very low frequent provider. It's like at the edge of frequent provider and at the tip of Pernicious Ulcer. Okay, so you can put, I would put it in either rank, I'll be fine. Okay, moving on now to the ultra rares. The AC Cobra 427 is a Pernicious Ulcer. Like I said earlier on in the video, this car is a really big disappointment. I know once again, it looks like it has really good on paper stats, but it has no MRA. The handling just isn't good enough. The 0 to 60 is strong. It actually is really, really strong, but it doesn't have the MRA to back it up. Now, I understand that this can be a decent car for the fast circuit and a decent car for the quarter mile, and that is true, but it's not going to win. It's still going to lose to a Charger 3, which is 5 RQ cheaper on a quarter mile, and it's going to lose to countless other cars in the twisty situation, although it has AT handling. So, unfortunately, it's a car that I've really never used. It is useful for this final, but then again, this final is a freaking joke. Next one is the Audi V8 Quattro. This one's also really sad. The fact that it is an ultra rare and it has less handling then the super rare version is just really, really, really atrocious, honestly. The Audi V8 Quattro is a massive disappointment, as we learned in the prelims, the preliminations for the Koenigsegg Tri-Series, okay? The V8 Quattro was the only four-wheel drive standard tire car that you could use for the prelims, and it still wasn't the best option over there. If you had the Ford RS200, which was the performance tire four-wheel drive car, or the Porsche 911 Carrera 4, which was also a four-wheel drive performance tire car, and once again, the Ford RS200 doesn't even have traction control or ABS. Those two performance tire four-wheel drive cars were still better than the Audi V8 Quattro on every track set outside of, I believe, the slalom. But I think the Porsche actually did beat the Quattro on the slalom as well, which is the most twisty of situations where that four-wheel drive center tires would be the most useful in. So the Audi V8 Quattro is really, really useless. Okay, and not only does it lose to its four-wheel drive center tire competition, it even loses to four-wheel drive performance tire competition in the wet, for crying out loud. loud. The Audi Quattro is a massive disappointment. I do want to bring it down to Meta Outsider, but once again, it has four-wheel drive, it has standard tires, so that niche is really just saving it, but it is the worst in that category. And then last but not least is the Lotus Esprit Turbo, and I'm gonna give it a frequent provider. It's kind of like, you know, a slightly better version of the Lotus Turbo Esprit HC, right? It's got a slightly lower 0 to 60, and that's about it. Handling's the same, top speed is the same. I think this makes sense to put both of them in the same place because one car is slightly better, and therefore the RQ is slightly higher. All right, now let's talk about the epics. First one, the AC Cobra MK3 427 is gonna be a pernicious ulcer for me, buddy. It's got a low 0 to 60. Handling sucks though. The top speed is higher. I mean, when you think about it, it has a very, very close resemblance in stats to the 427. The only difference is about one handling, 20 miles per hour, and a lot of MRA. So yeah, to be fair, 10 RQ more. That being said though, it is on the lower, you know, echelon, I guess. Lower, I know upper echelon is a thing, is lower echelon a thing. It's in the lower grade for epics, and it's a car that you're not going to use very often. It is a 60s car, so there's a niche over there, but it still isn't the best in that. And then we have the Audi Quattro. Now the Audi Quattro is a car that I want to love. You cannot hate this car because of how it looks. Like I said in yesterday's video, a picture does a lot in justifying, you know, how much you want a car or how much you like a car. The Audi Sport Quattro has the advantage of it's already a very beautiful car, but giving it that extra beautiful picture makes me and probably every other player want to love this. But how good is it actually? Four-wheel drive, medium ground clearance. It's got a weak 0 to 60, no MRI, but their handling is okay. It's just okay. It is also, I believe, what year is it? I think it's from the 80s, I believe. So honestly, it could either be a frequent provider or a pernicious ulcer. It's still a relatively new car. I've never owned it. I do want to get it because I love how it looks, but I've never had the privilege of owning this car. For now, I'm gonna put it in frequent provider mainly because it handles pretty well. It is medium ground clearance. Might be a pretty decent car to use in like wet situations where city streets small. But for those owners who own this car, let me know down in the comments below how you actually feel about the Audi Sport Quattro. Like I said, once again, this tier list is going to be, you know, based off, you know, my experience and my personal opinion, but the Audi Sport Quattro looks decent. I don't own it, so let me know if it deserves to be a frequent provider or if it actually is a disappointment to use. And then we have the Ford Escort RS 1700T. Interesting one. In a general sense, this wouldn't be a very useful car because it still loses to the Lancia 037, which everybody and their mom has. But if it's a World Expo only situation, it is going to be a very strong car because then you can't use the Lancia 037 anymore. So where will I put it? I wouldn't put it in Der Kaiser, but I would put it in daily driver. A low daily driver, maybe a high frequent provider, because like I said, in a general sense, you're never going to use it. But in a more of a what you would call it, a World Expo sense, it's all right. And much like, you know, the more that I think about the Ford Escort RS 1700, the more I resemble it towards the Aerial Nomad, where maybe off-road isn't the best place to put the Ford Escort. Perhaps this is a place where you want to put it on dry city streets instead, because it has a really low 0 to 60. It's 3.494. That is like very similar stats to many performance tire epics with low ground clearance, and on top of that the Ford Escort is medium ground clearance, so there is a niche to it, but I will give it a daily driver at best. The Ford GT70 is going to be a frequent provider. Much like the Ford, there is a niche to it as well, but it is less useful because it is a less powerful car with a worse 0 to 60 and worse handling. Again, medium ground clearance. It also is very, very light. It's a car that you might want to save RQ with if there's any city streets in any event and you want to save some RQ, then the Ford GT70 might be the car to use. But then again, outside of being an RQ saver within that niche, you're not going to use it anywhere else, so frequent provider is the highest I'm going to give to it. The Porsche 924 Carrera GTP definitely is Der Kaiser. Amazing MRI, great top speed, a decent 0 to 60, and amazing handling. I mean, that car is fantastic, and that's the same for the 936 and the 956. Both of these cars have their MRIs in the hundreds, they have their top speeds of over 200, and their 0 to 60s of sub 3 seconds or 3 seconds. Their handlings are also above 90s. I've talked about these two cars very often already, and very much in the past. They're good cars, it's just that they're useless for the final. But they're good, you know, if you do want to open this pack just for funsies, you don't want to compete in the final, and you do get lucky and you do get a legendary, then the one good thing about this pack is that if you do pull a legendary, at least 100% of the time, the legendary is actually going to be good. Okay, now let's move on to the tier list for how good these cars are going to be in the final. So guys, here it is for the final prize car winning. If I had no duplicates and I only had unique cars, the top 5 cars I would use are the top 5 that you will see over here. I'd be using the 956 and the 936 for the dry. I'd be using the Audi Sport Quattro, the V8 Quattro for the twisty wet stuff, and the AC Cobra for the wet fast stuff. Basically the 0 to 100s and the test bowl that we saw earlier on in the video. Possible prize car winning would include the Porsche 924 to basically replace these two legendaries, the Cobra to replace the MK in the fast wet stuff, and the Ford RS 1700 to replace the two legendaries as well. I mean, you would probably need to use this and one legendary if you want to win the prize car. Well, actually, considering how low the bar is for this final, you could probably just use the Ford and the 924 and you would probably be fine with winning the prize car. Questionable chances once again would be the Ford GT70 and the Audi, the Lotus, and the Audi Quattro. This Audi, like I said, is somewhat decent. If you don't have the Ultra or you don't have the Epic, then this Audi could probably be a pretty decent replacement. And then the cars that are pretty sus would be the Granada and the Turbo. Like I said, you know, the Turbo is just a worse version of the Esprit Turbo, and the Granada is a worse version of the Audi. And then last but not least, go see a doctor. These cars are not going to provide any value for you whatsoever in the final. That's going to be the Mercedes-Benz 560 SEC, my baby, and the Porsche 718 RSK. But to be completely honest, like I said earlier on in the video, this final is a bit of a joke. I really don't know why the team allowed for this to happen. The only party that I can see having fun with this event are Hutch themselves if they want to see the player base burn. Think about it this way: they've created an event where you can only get 3 Ultras from the carbon fiber pack, and if you want to open all 15 to be competitive in a final, the chances are you're gonna get, you know, a majority of those 3 Ultras, and those 3 Ultras aren't even good Ultras. Yeah, the legendaries are fantastic from this pack, but if you do get them, it's not like they're gonna be super useful in the final. Yeah, maybe 1 or 2, but more than that is going to be useless. And last but not least are the epics. All of the epics outside of one, the Porsche 924, are pretty underwhelming. You can make a case for the Ford Escort being decent, so maybe in that sense 50% of the epics are good and 100% of the legendaries are good, which on paper is a good thing, but when you think about it, who actually will have a lot of fun opening the packs in bulk if you're just going to be getting the same cars over and over and over? What I'll say is this: I'm in a bit of a conundrum because this pack definitely is a joke, but it isn't the worst pack that we've ever seen, because we've seen packs that gives out cars in these numbers, very low numbers, and the cars themselves were all garbage. At least in this one, the numbers a bit of a joke, but at least the 2 legendaries are actually really good, and maybe 50% of the epics are really decent, depending on how high you want to rank the Ford Escort. But the 924 definitely is a fantastic car. But once again, if you have 3 of these, you can't even use 3 of them in the final because there's 3 wet, and they're basically forcing you. The one that pisses me off the most is that they're forcing you to win and use the AC Cobra. It is a super useful car for this final, don't get me wrong, but you're never ever going to use it again outside of that. So if you do own this car in your garage, ask yourself twice if you really want to max this car just for one final for it to never be used again. But anyway guys, that's going to be it for today. That is what I feel about the 1955 to 1989 World Expo pack. Not the worst thing ever, but definitely far from the best as well. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day, and stay safe, wash your hands, and blossom out. Peace.
Bro, this song just makes me so happy.
Me too.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies.
They so fine.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies.
They so fine.
Sit back, relax, and